You've probably heard me talk about Mando whole body deodorant by now, but if you haven't, listen up. A buddy recommended this to me, and I have never looked back. This stuff is a game changer. You can use it on your whole body. Yeah, that's right. Pits, feet, and beyond. It's dermatologist tested and gentle on all the sensitive areas. Plus, it's clinically proven to control odors for 72 hours. My go-to scent? Bourbon leather. It's bold, just like me. But Mando's got options. Clover Woods, Mount Fuji, Pro Sport, or even unscented if you want to keep things low-key. And let me tell you, I put this stuff on yesterday before a workout, a run, and a meeting, and I still smell incredible. I'd like you guys to try it, and I want you to know Mando has got a starter pack for all new customers. You get a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products like body wash or deodorant wipes, and free shipping. And here's the kicker. Use code Chael at shopmando.com. That's going to get you $5 off. That's over 40% off your first pack. So stop messing around. Upgrade to Mando. Go to shopmando.com. Use the code Chael or just click on the link below. $40 million. That is Jake Paul's guarantee or his projected purse. I got to tell you, I kind of had a hard time figuring this out. But to take on Mike Tyson, and you know what, guys? Probably what we would have guessed. We'd have probably guessed somewhere right in there. And there's something about money that is fascinating. Almost because it's one of those forbidden things. Like, you know, you and your buddies don't get together and start talking about how much people are making. But it doesn't mean you're not curious. And so it is kind of one of these interesting things. And the large narrative on why Mike Tyson would do this has been money. That's a narrative. I don't know if I buy that. But I have been curious. So, if Jake Paul is to get $40 million, what do you guys think? Who's the A side? Who's the B side? I mean, one thing in boxing that would be really fair is if they just split it. Some people have argued that in MMA. If you just split it. You know, there's this much purse for this event. Instead of breaking up your show and my show and the win bonus versus the win bonus, let's just split it right down the middle. And it never works out that way. It just never does. Somebody always believes they're the A side. They want to be looked at in that manner. I do believe you could have Jake Paul fighting, and it wouldn't have to be Mike Tyson. But I must admit, of all the ideas for Jake Paul, that's the most intriguing to me. All right, let's switch them. Jake Paul's out. Mike Tyson's in. Are there other people that Mike could have fought that would have captured your interest? Sure. But when Mike Tyson and Evander Holyfield, this is coming right off the backside of Tyson versus Roy Jones Jr., which 95% of people, including those who watched it, believe Mike Tyson won. Oh, by the way, I'm not questioning the judges' scorecards. The way people remember it was that Mike Tyson won. It was officially a draw, which was the right call. That's not the part being disputed. It just always felt like a win for Tyson. Always. He came back and he showed us and he held up and he got really tired and he pushed through it and he tried to win in the last round as much as he was trying to win in 1 and 2. It was one of these things where he was really the one that came out of that. Instant talks for what's next for Tyson captivated the headlines. There was not a discussion on what was next for Roy. Where does Roy go after that showing? And by the way, Roy's the one whose back was up against it. He was the one that was given up the size. So it should have been a massive win for Roy. By example, I think stock rising the most, just from this past weekend, what we saw is Khalil Roundtree. That's what I think. From wherever Khalil was, whatever you thought he was capable of doing, or wherever you thought he belonged in that division since he's ranked number 8, I think right, like whatever's next for Khalil, we can almost guarantee it's going to be something very big. Probably Jamal, possibly Yuri, but all of a sudden, those are real feature matches. And coming out of Roy Jones and Mike Tyson, it didn't seem to go that way. It seemed to go towards Mike, and there was talk of $20 million for Tyson versus Holyfield. And I think that you could have justified it. Now, at that time, that's before Holyfield had returned. That's before having the benefit of seeing what you saw, Holyfield versus Vitor. And it would seem as though that would be the biggest possible comeback match that the world would have to offer. And the number was 20 million, and the promoters couldn't come up with it. They couldn't justify it. So here we are in a situation where the loftiest number that ever got mentioned for a fight that felt like would have been the most captivating, Holyfield versus Tyson. Here we are with Jake Paul, nowhere near the weight class, nowhere near the pass, nowhere near the storyline, double the money. Do you believe it? It's a real interesting one. It's a real interesting one. Jake Paul has been as honest with the audience as any boxer I have ever seen, including basically an apology to Espinoza somewhere along the way for the lack of interest in build to the Tyron Woodley rematch. And it wasn't quite an apology, but Jake owned it. All the way down to being embarrassed and having to return the funds and sitting on $1 million gate at Madison Square Garden for himself versus Tommy Fury. And I just share that with you because if Jake comes out and says 40 million, like, well, okay, I can't find it. I can't find it or see where that's at, but I am wildly curious if that is accurate. There won't be a pay-per-view structure, or at least not like you're used to with a pay-per-view structure. But Netflix knows about buying content. They know about what to do with these things and where to move it. Somebody who's promoting this has booked Jerry's World. Conor McGregor said it himself. What in the heck are they doing there? And it is just one of these things where you have to know in hindsight. Jake Paul having a guarantee of 40 million. And the whole question is, do we believe it? Jake Paul is representing that. He is the producer. They are the producers, and they're going to sell this to Netflix. I mean, that's what Oprah did, right? Like, that's what you do when you get really rich. The problem is if you do that, you don't have a guarantee. You don't, in life, get to keep all of the good on the back end and then can guarantee I'm going to get 40 million. If you're the one, somebody's writing you a check, then they're the one to keep it. And I don't know where the 40 million would come from. Now, overarching, I'm always trying to learn something. And the business side of combat is a very fascinating thing. And I would like to know who's getting more, because the egos are the ones that get in the way of this. Like, I think that Jake Paul is actually a true competitor, unlike you guys give him credit for. And I think, wow, Mike Tyson, I'm going to get to do something with him. Whether it's compete with, have a chance to beat, actually box. Like, it wouldn't really matter if you had somebody interested in combat, specifically boxing, from that generation of Jake Paul. Anything you can do with Mike Tyson, what a cool thing. But not necessarily for Mike. Mike isn't looking about it thinking, oh, first ever fight on Netflix. He's not looking at it thinking, oh, I'm going to go into Jerry's World. He's not looking at it saying, that kid that was the Disney star, now he does good numbers on YouTube. Well, I can't wait to align with him. It's not like that. And I do know that egos get in the way. And while Mike might be completely fine make numbers up, getting $10,000, he could be completely fine with that. If he finds out the opponent is getting $15,000, all of a sudden he's not okay with it. Like, that emotion is an extremely real thing. Anytime in life you start counting the other guy's money, the relationship isn't going to work. So, knowing that that is the culture that Tyson comes from, if Jake is getting 40 million, I can assure you Mike is getting more than 40 million. Should we just call it a wash, guys? Should we just say they're both getting the same thing? Okay, you got $80 million going in. When I was in 6th grade, Miss Eiler's classroom, I read on a paper that she supplied the biggest heavyweight title fight of all time, and biggest by money and purses of all time, was an Olympic champion named Michael Spinks versus an Olympic hopeful named Mike Tyson, who didn't make it. But Tyson did go and become a world champion in the pros, and Spinks did the same thing, but from down a weight class. Spinks is moving up. The Olympic hero, the unbeaten world champion Spinks, is moving to step 2. The hottest prospect in boxing, Mike Tyson. You want to know what that did? $29 million. Now, I was in that classroom in 1988. If I'm wrong, it was 87. You know how the school year goes. I understand inflation. I understand that things have changed. But here's what I am going to tell you. If you had taken even Mike Tyson, who was the highest paid fighter in the world in the biggest fight of all time, and told him at 58 years old, that's the day that he's going to come back and break this record, he would have asked some questions like, well, I bet that guy will also be Olympic champion. I bet that guy will also have been undefeated. I bet that guy will also have been a multiple-time world champion. And if they go, no, it's none of those things, but he's really famous and there's something called the internet. It's just a conversation that Mike Tyson that faced Michael Spinks would not be able to have with this Mike Tyson that's going to face Jake Paul. And it's a wildly different time. And I find the money fascinating. I really do. And if Jake Paul is getting 40, I assume Mike is getting more than 40. And I would like that to be confirmed or verified. And it's one of the reasons you always got to be careful what you read. Because if Mike isn't getting more than 40, ego-wise, it's going to become a huge problem. And that's not a mistake that Jake Paul would put out. But he would put a big, beautiful number justifying the event in form of promotion. So what are you going to believe? Who are you going to believe? What information's real? Who do you get your information from?